I'm going to open the meeting of the Finance Committee tonight. And since we have one person online, we'll do a roll call. Derek is out. He's not going to be able to make the meeting tonight. So we're going to have 5 out of the 6 of us here, so we have 4. Kyle Pike here.
Michael Coward here.
Marcia Meekins here.
David Fuller here.
Deborah Moran here.
Thank you. All right, before we get into the detailed budgets, I'm going to go a little bit out of order tonight. I want to do the quick update for the education budgets and a quick update on the excess levy capacity. The reason I want to do this is that, number one, this is going to be quick. It's kind of a summary. And number two, when we leave these items until after the budget departments, I sometimes feel we don't give them a decent treatment. Kingston local schools last night, the school committee voted their budget. They voted their budget at the amount that we had in the budget here that the selectmen had approved for KES and KIS. If you remember, it was our 4% targeted budget plus another 450K or thereabouts for the extra state aid to education that we received this year. So that makes their budget, KES and KIS, an increase for the year of $1,028,000. You see it on the second page of the handout, and 7.1%. The third page of the handout is the Silver Lake Regional School assessments. For Kingston, it came in at an increase of $430,000 or 2.6%. Really a good situation. It's one of these years where Halifax's increase is 4.8%. So the bottom line of the assessment increase is 2.9%, just about 3%. How Silver Lake was able to make their these numbers was they're using some of their excess and deficiency account, in effect, their free cash to balance the budget. That's somewhat of a dangerous situation. It can put you in a bind when you start next year. The local schools, how they got to their number last night was they have benefited by over $1 million of state reimbursement for the Baymont students. And they have, in effect, utilized over 800K of that to balance their budget. So again, I worry as a conservative finance guy that you're starting next year with a deficit because you use one-time revenue that chances are you're not going to have next year. All that being said, gets us to the front page of my handout here, which says that the increase for education for these budgets for Kingston is $1,458,000, which is 4.7%, which all in all, I think I commend the schools for being able to get to that point. That it was, I think, a real challenge, and 4.7% is probably a percentage point more than I personally like as the conservative finance guy, but it's a reasonable situation, and it does get us through the one more year this year without the requirement of a override for education. This brings me into how I want to tie this in is our excess levy capacity. You know, since I've been involved here in Kingston, I've always targeted an excess levy capacity of a minimum of $1 million. And we've had the last 2 or 3 years, $2 million or so of excess levy capacity. I just think that, you know, towns, if they're really living within their means, will always maintain an effective reserve of levy capacity of $1 million or more. The current budget that we're looking at right now, that the selectmen have approved, that contains these education numbers that I just quoted, that contains the police and fire that we're going to review tonight, okay, has excess levy capacity of about $207,000. Now, to give you an idea of how that relates to the $1 million or so that I like to talk about, if education had come in at 4%, that would have provided another 200K. If fire had come in at 4%, that would have provided 200K. If police had come in at 4%, that would have provided almost 300K. Employee benefits, mostly driven by the county pension assessment. If that had come in at 4%, that would have provided another over $300,000 of excess levy capacity. So those four departments, education, police, fire, and employee benefits, if they were at 4%, we would have $1,030,000 of excess levy capacity from them, plus the 200K we have on the books in the budget right now. So $1.2 million. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're spending our money, where we're having the issues. I would say that one of the reasons that I'm touting these numbers is I think a lot of the town administration, the finance committee, even the board of selectmen, over my last 10 years of involvement, tends to look at education as always the dollar budget problem. Yes, education is by far the biggest part of the budget, approximately 50%. But at the same time, we've done a good job, I believe, in funding police, funding fire, funding employee benefits, funding some of the other departments, so that I think it behooves all of us to make sure that residents understand that it's not only education that's costing this town, that it's other functions too that we're spending our money on. That's really all I have on those two items. Oh, on the education, we have it scheduled on our budget, on our schedule here to review the budgets on April 2nd. I'm going to move that up to our next meeting, March 19th. 2 weeks from tonight, we'll review those budgets. I'm not sure that there's much we can do, but we will at least look at it. I will invite representatives of the school administrations and the school committees if they choose to attend and answer any of your questions. Does anybody from the finance committee here have any questions on what I've just talked about?
The other missing piece to the puzzle, free cash remains at what? 800?
Free cash, I believe,
About 7.
7?
Yes.
and that's after utilizing
Everything.
over $1 million for capital, isn't it?
Just under $1 million for capital, but then we've got the stabilization and those types of things. We have those transfers going to those as well.
We'll review that in much more detail when we review the warrant articles. And we'll bring free cash discussion in as part of that. If there's anything that we disagree about spending money, spending free cash, for instance, stabilization fund. There's nothing that says you have to increase stabilization fund 100K every year. So those discussions will come up April. Yeah. Well, actually, I have them scheduled for 2 weeks from now. I don't know if we'll have enough on the warrant 2 weeks from now, Keith, to talk about it.
The actual one itself.
Yeah.
So I have a table of contents done, and it's just, frankly, it's a matter of just plugging numbers in from there. I'm happy to share the table, what we have for articles that I'm aware of.
Okay, we can decide as we get closer to our meeting of the 19th, if we want to review the warrant articles on the 19th or defer it until April 2nd. Okay, any questions? All right, let's move on to the budget reviews and let's do the fire department first.
Fire in the hole. Fire in the hole. All right,
And
Carl.
I will be glad to let, David lead this one since,
That's what I think.
one of his,
Not sure you still.
assignments. Thank you.
Maybe you was. I'm okay. Saying. Yeah, so both myself and Marcia met with the chief the other day and went through the budget. And to me, it's actually pretty straightforward. We'll go through it, right? The chief does a really good job. He puts an overview. I don't know if it went out to everybody, but he puts an overview on here, not only of the equipment and the facilities, but, you know, Carl always asks about the personnel, right? So we have the chief, the deputy chief, an administrative assistant, 4 captains, 20 firefighters for the personnel. If you look at the budget itself, the things I asked about and Marcia asked about, you just go line by line. So the clerical union line was plus 7.3%. What, you know, why is that? And the explanation is there's a new administrative assistant. The new administrative assistant has a slightly higher salary than the old. The line after that, contracts, is the chief next to me got a new deal. So that's him and the deputy. So that's what that increase is coming from. And then after that, the fire union line, that's the firefighters, right, with the contractual obligations. And if you remember, I can't remember, it's 2 years now or a year and a half. We added 4, right? And but now in this budget, I mean, the 4 are fully in there in this budget.
Right.
Another thing, and no offense to chief or the department, it's a slightly older department. So also the 4 newer firefighters, after their year, they get a step. But most of the rest of the department doesn't get a step. They're just getting the COLA. If you were wondering about that. Unfortunately, we had a lot of injuries this year and continue kind of ongoing. The chief can talk about that, but that's where you see some of these increases in the line items. And that then causes, you know, recall line item to go way up, so on and so forth. So that's essentially personal services. When you go down to the you know, operating expenses, there's not much there. It's flat year over year. The third one you see there, property, that's the water bill that they're hit with, that they weren't in the past. They had a slight increase in the software, nothing crazy. And then you'll see the 21.2% increase halfway down to 80,000. That's for the ambulance billing. Ambulance billings are up, so it's a double-edged sword. So the expenses of the line item are up, but the revenue's up, and I think we're just under like 1.7 million for revenue. 1,698.
Is that what we're gonna have?
So 1,698,000, and then we did some rate adjustments, some billing adjustments. So that conservatively will provide about another 62,000, and that's on the conservative side.
The 1,698,000, is that year to date?
That's a 12-month 2024.
Period, okay, well, that's good, because we have 1.5 million in the budget, so I'm comfortable.
And if we continue to see the increases we've been seeing in call volume, that'll obviously bring that up as well.
So anyways, that's your fuller update on the fire department. Marcia, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add, David. Great job.
All right. Carl, I'll shoot it back to you.
Okay, Mike, do you have any questions? Deb, do you have any questions?
I thought it was very thorough. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments, of course. When I look at the budget for the fire union, just at a high level, the base pay, including captains, everybody that's in that union is over 100K now, the base pay. And then we have 900K of holiday, overtime, recall, training, sick. I'm just making the assumption that most of that is probably going into the fire union people. So that's another 900K. If you divide that by 20 people or 24 people, it's 38K. So we're somewhere around 140K per firefighter, including the captains, an average.
Between base and overtime.
Yeah, over those 24 people. Just a fact. I think it's just trying to get out that, there was a time where we felt that we were underpaying some of our departments. I think that this is an indication that
You're not.
the payroll has caught up nicely and they're fairly well compensated.
Agreed.
The increase for this year, I'm not sure if I heard you say it, but it's 9%, right? 9%. I would hope that we're can get back to the place where, the fire department, especially with the extra 4 people from 2 years ago, will be closer to the 3 or 4% annual increase than 9%. Because again, 9% across departments is not sustainable unless we want to go for a Proposition 2.5 override every year. And I don't think that's reasonable. And I like the format of Mark's summary here. I don't know where he got that format from.
You couldn't wait for me to compliment you. You had to do it yourself. No, a long time ago, and I've learned an awful lot from Carl, and I thank him for that all the time. A long time ago, Carl used to sit and make all these notes, and a couple of years ago, I started doing it for you.
So all in all, I'm comfortable with the fire department budget. I think one of the things that we're seeing this year is I've had people call me, Carl, I can't believe you. That I think that I personally have taken the approach that this is a year that between what we were seeing from the schools, what we were seeing from the police department, what we're seeing somewhat from the fire department, that this is a year that we weren't going to be able to maintain any excess levy capacity. So that I have put most of my time and efforts into trying to work with various people in getting us to a point where we don't need an override, and saying if that means that we go to town meeting with a 0 excess levy capacity, that's something that this conservative finance guy will live with for this year. So with that said, if there's no other questions concerning the fire department budget, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the fire department's fiscal year 2020.
This number.
Oh, isn't it the 4,000,000?
There's a couple errors over there.
$4,305,066.12.
Do I have a second?
60, is that a 6? Yeah.
$66.12.
Second.
All in favor? Carl, aye.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
David,
Hi, Debbie, I'm sorry, I'm just, I'm looking at the book. It says budget 4 million. Did you say 4? I thought you said 1.
No, 4.
Oh, 4.
4 million.
Oh, okay, all right, then,
305,000.
yeah, Debbie, I.
All right.
Thank you, folks.
Finance Committee recommends approval of the fire department budget as presented. We recommend it 5-0-0. Okay, let's move on to the police department budgets. Let's get the animal control and harbor master ones. taken care of here. The animal control budget, was $117,042 last year. It's $119,102 this year. It's made up of $86,000 for wage and personnel, which is the animal control officer and her assistant. Remind me, Laura, what their hours are?
The shelter's open every day right now. 8
No,
to
what
4.
the.
Oh,
work
I'm
hours
sorry.
for the two of them, 30,
It's 28 and 26 per week.
28, and 26. There's vacation coverage of 10K, overtime of 7K, stipends of 7.6K. Remind me what that's for?
That is for the animal inspector, which is a separate position, a separate person that goes and inspects all our farms and barns.
And that is a separate person? It's
Yes,
not
it
done
is.
by one of
No.
you? Okay.
It's always been a separate person.
And it's
except
a
for
right
short
to
time.
farm community. We better have that $7,600 in the budget.
Yes, and that is a bargain because I did a survey of neighboring towns and she's makes like at least 3,000 less than other towns that have 2 animal inspectors.
Okay.
She's doing it all by herself.
All other expenses are about 8K. The actuals to date are 76K, which would look like it's pretty much in line with what the budget for the year is. So I don't have any other questions or comments. Finance committee members, any questions, comments? Can I have a motion?
The finance committee recommend approval of the animal control budget for fiscal 26 in the amount of $119,102.
Second,
All in favor, Kyle, I.
Michael, I.
Marshall,
Dave, I.
Debbie, I.
Finance committee recommends approval of the animal control budget as presented 500. The harbor master budget. Again, pretty the same thing. A budget last year of 119,000. This year, $116,983. Slightly less in the wage line. I assume that's kind of based upon the
A
experience.
change in staff.
Change in staff. And that's the harbor master and an assistant and then 4 or 5.
Shellfish, and then assistant harbor masters. That's correct. And their admin.
Supplies of $11,000. That's the supplies down at the waterfront, I believe.
Mhm.
Shellfish for 7,000. I think that's what the shellfish
The seeds.
warden has to do for seeding the bay and those types of things. I've been around too many times.
Sometimes, yes, you
when I
don't
know
even have
Some of
to.
this detail.
How about the last one, Carl? What's the
Yeah.
last one?
The ad funding.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Is it $500? I believe that is for vehicle repairs. Because it was reduced to $250, and last year's, I believe, was like around 3,000.
One of the things to always remember about this department is that they have the waterways fund where the last I remember was 50 or 60K a year you take in.
Yeah.
And so that really supplements their budget. And, you know, they buy some of their boats and some of the things from that when town meeting authorizes the expenditure of the funds.
Cool.
Any questions on the harbor master budget?
Well, the finance committee recommend approval of the harbor master budget for fiscal 26 in the amount of $116,983.
second,
All in favor, Kyle, I.
Michael, I.
Marshall,
Dave, I.
Debbie, I.
Finance committee recommends approval of the harbor master budget unanimously, 500. All right, the police department budget. This one's a little bit larger. Marcia and I met with Laura and the chief for a couple of hours. Some of my summary comments are that with the new police chief in town, he's looking at things and, trying to bring the department up to speed. I think that before I even talk about a lot of the numbers or anything, I'll give the chief the opportunity to say a few words to us.
Thank you. It was a good meeting with you and Marcia last week. We are trying to dig up out of a pretty deep hole, and we're trying to basically catch up from where we are and where we need to be. Candidly, the town supported an additional patrol officer who will ultimately serve as a traffic control officer. That additional officer is going to the academy next month. He and another person that are the backfill of retirement are both going together in the month of April. They're in the process right now. Anticipate they'll be entering the academy and they'll be out in 6 months. There'll be a period of field training that can be anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes a little bit longer if needed. And the employees will be probationary for a period of about a year. Other than that, the growth has been supported by the Board of Selectmen for maintaining level services, do an adjustment beyond the 4%, something along the line of $233,000. We appreciate that. I did send a request for override funding to the chair. I don't know if you, in your discretion, shared that with the other members, but totally up to you whether or not you take that up tonight. I'm not happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions of the chief on, in a general nature before we look at some of the details here? Hearing none. Personnel, we have a chief, we have 2 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, and 17 patrolmen, for a total right now of 26 officers. We have 1 administrator and we have 8 dispatchers. The average salary of the lieutenants is about 175K, of the sergeants about 120K, the patrolmen about 90K, dispatchers, including their overtime, about 85K. We have overtime, training, and career incentives of another $1,466,000. If I divide that by 23, assuming just sergeants and patrolmen, I come up with another 65. So that that gives you an idea of the compensation levels in the department. The other expenses, training seminars of 87K, dues and memberships of 36K, uniforms 35K, vehicle repairs 30K, the computer expense 25K, and others that add up to about 100K. I think most of you have heard me say before that when I'm looking at department budgets where we've got over 5 million, in this case, we have over $5 million, what I call labor, salary related, 5,045,000. And then we have, all other of less than 500K. So that I've always felt that we shouldn't be nickel and diming the expenses when that's what's supporting the salaries. One thing that I thought might be interesting is to look at the changes from 2024 actuals before the chief came in to this 2026 budget. The patrolman base salary line is up 300K. The sergeant's base salary line is up about 100K. Overtime is up about 300K. Training and seminars is up about 225K. Dispatch, including overtime, is up about 50K. So that I think you can see from that, that these are the things the chief was just talking about, needing to add on a patrolman or two, needing to update the training, yeah, either by sending people outside or having training seminars, probably more participation in dues and memberships, that type of thing. So that, I think that I'm satisfied that I know more than enough that I need to know concerning the police department budget. Since the override, I will just comment on that briefly. So the latest that the chief has provided is an override requirement of $500,000. What he's looking for is one additional full-time sergeant, 2 additional patrolmen, and that doesn't leave much, at least 13, 14K left over. So his 500K is looking for a sergeant and 2 patrolmen. Above and beyond that, he's getting a 3rd patrolman that will be funded by the Silver Lake Regional School District for a full-time SRO at the middle school. That, as most of you know, we've had an officer up there, kind of, I think, going back and forth between the 2 schools. And the desire of the school people is to have a full-time SRO in each building. And it looks like that they're going to be able to get that funding through their budget for the next go-round. I don't feel that we really need, unless you want to ask the chief specific questions concerning his override amount, I'm not going to ask us to vote on it tonight, because I'd like to know for sure that we're going to go forward with an override. That I would think next week, between the selectmen's meeting and working on the warrant, decisions will be made whether we're going to go forward with an override for the police department. And if they do, then our meeting 2 weeks from tonight is when we would vote our recommendation for the override. I personally think that I fully understand these budget increases for the police. I guess I didn't point out, and I really need to, is that the total increase since the 2024 actuals is almost $1.1 million, which is basically a 25% increase over the actuals that we had for 24. I think a lot of us in the town government have felt that we've been very fortunate with, and it's strange to say it this way, but from a financial point of view, we've been fortunate in effect, underfunding the police department over at least the last 5 years. And yeah, it's come home to roost now. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. I think it's more a question of whether we are trying to do this over 1, 2, 3, 4 year period. So that one of the things that I was hoping, and I'm still, working, I think, with the town administration and the Board of Selectmen, is if we could find any more money to be able to support putting in the budget right now, another police officer or 2 police officers, and saying, hey, that's all we can do this time around, and let's bypass, let's not do an override. But that's something that is beyond this committee and something that I think we'll continue to work towards. As I said, when there's excess levy capacity of $206,000, that to me automatically could, if the selectmen wanted to do it, if the finance committee agreed to it, if the town administration agreed to it, could certainly provide 1.5 additional patrolmen in the budget immediately. So with that, I'm going to open it up to David and Mike and Masha and Deb for your questions, because the chief, or any comments.
So, a couple things. Unfortunately, unlike fire, revenue, you don't get a tremendous amount of revenue, correct?
Right.
Is there any revenue?
Detailed billing is plus 10% over the rate. Parking tickets goes to general fund and it has to stay that way. You know, you couldn't,
And what is that?
not a lot.
Not a lot. Not a lot. Minimal. Okay. Secondarily, we're talking, Carl gave a good breakdown of the number of officers, and then we're talking the override just briefly, and you're asking for another sergeant and 2 patrol, which goes to my question is there a method to the madness as far as a ratio between number of patrolmen to a sergeant to a lieutenant?
It's a good question. The ratio right now of just overall personnel is 2 patrol officers to 1 supervisor. There are, city methodologies that you can use, the Michigan State University staffing study, but that's more oriented towards patrol officers in a city environment. What we did is we basically, I have a PowerPoint you can take a look at afterwards if you'd like, because you're going to be taking this up again if it is an override, but it's comparable based on calls for service and like cities around us, towns around us, the call volume and the number of personnel per 1,000 people.
Yeah, and that ratio is similar.
No,
2
we're
patrol
behind.
to 1.
No,
No, I mean-
we're behind in terms of how many people we have.
No, but I mean the staffing ratio. So approximately 2 patrolmen to 1 sergeant.
I
Type
don't think it's the same. I think we're behind.
Okay.
But I think, can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to say, Chief, but maybe,
Yeah.
maybe you understand that, and I apologize for interfering when I don't need to be.
Yep, it's okay.
But if you had the number of patrolmen you were looking for, the ratio wouldn't be 2 to 1, it would be something more than 3 to 1, even potentially 4 to 1.
Correct. And the logic behind that is like the town's not in a position to have minimum staffing levels without a higher ratio of more patrol officers to a supervisor.
Okay.
So we need more patrolmen than we do supervisors.
Oh. Is-
Long term, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just trying to figure out, is there a specific ratio? 2 to 1, 3 to 1,
3 to 1?
4 to 1?
Where do they
Like
go?
currently we're at 17 patrol to 6 sergeants and technically there's 2 lieutenants. I'm just trying to figure out the ratios and
And I suspect.
the hierarchy.
I suspect in the department this size, that we probably have lieutenants sometimes that are doing jobs of patrolmen and sergeants that are doing jobs of patrolmen. So that it's a little bit misleading because, Kyle Pike's initial reaction would be, Jesus, if I've got 3, I got a chief and 2 lieutenants and I got 6 sergeants, that's 9 supervisors, and I got 16 patrolmen, that's, less than 2 to 1.
Yeah.
And I, don't think we should have a supervisor for every 2 workers. But then again, I recognize the kind of work being done.
Okay. And
So you'd agree that it's good work.
It's the best.
Okay, I agree too.
All right. And then lastly, for me to make sure we're on the same page and got our bearings, because we got different Excel spreadsheets and so on and so forth. So what numbers am I going off of? So I know back in this old sheet, right? The department request was 6.1 million,
That's-
call it.
Forget that one.
Yeah.
Long
forget
gone, right?
5388.
So we're looking off of
I thought
5.
it was 5.4.
Me too, 5.4,
5.375.
5.375.
So I got,
Yes,
Because they added $211,000, right?
right.
The
That
sheet
was
I
for the
got this
selectmen's
morning.
meeting.
It's 5388.
Yeah.
Because we bet, yeah.
What happened?
Oh, wait a
We
minute.
reduced
Yeah.
it by,
I didn't get that,
Um,
okay. I'm looking at the sheet that Carl and I went
Oh,
over.
the thing-
20,
okay, yeah, no, we're good with that number.
Yeah,
5.3.
5.3.
5.3.
Okay.
Okay, so further
Okay.
clarification, on my sheet, this is listed as 2026 selectmen. So this is the number the selectmen were on board with,
They may have to vote an
Yes.
update.
but essentially they're on board. Okay. My next question is, now the data missing is my town administrator. What is his recommended number? Is it the same as the selectmen's or is it different?
no, I think it's the same as the selectmen's. Should be the same as the selectmen's.
You're on board.
We had to make a couple of modifications And both keep strengthening work. We had to, I think we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, the FinCom. We had a debt issue we resolved, $73,000 adjustment we had to make, and we adjusted that to the selectmen's budget, to the police budget, the fire budget, and a couple of them.
Good, you're fine with it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Back to square one. Okay, so at 5188.
538.
5388. See, Carl, I could have had 200 grand. At 5388.
Yes.
No reductions in staff?
No.
We're
Yes,
all good
we have.
there. Okay. That's all the
now.
questions. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Mike, do you have any questions?
Could you just briefly walk us through kind of how the staffing works on a day-to-day level, how all of those officers are scheduled
Sure.
roughly?
Yeah, I mean, every shift is 3 patrol officers and 1 supervisor. You guys can jump in if I'm inaccurate. The midnight shift is 2 patrol officers, 1 supervisor. If somebody takes the day off, we're required to backfill it. If it's a patrolman, it's right of first refusal for a patrol officer and last refusal for a supervisor. Our specialists, Monday through Friday during the week, don't count towards staffing. If they take the day off, we're not required to backfill, like, for example, a detective's position. SRO, one of the benefits of additional SRO funded by the school's D&E is that if one is off, there'd be redundancy where one can cover both schools. Lucky him. So that's it in a nutshell. Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, the only thing I would add was, it was brought up of like the ratio between sergeants and patrolmen, 2 to 1. I get where that's coming from, but as it is right now, the 6 sergeants that we have, you need 4.5 just to fill the shifts, just to have a sergeant on every shift. 4 and 2 schedule on days off and things like that. The other sergeant right now is over it as the court prosecutor / detective who manages that
Business unit.
division there. So it does, to do like 2 to 1 and all that, it's just to fill the hours is kind of where that 6 is. And then this patrol staff is to fill what the chief was saying, 3 patrolmen on days and 4 to 12s. And then 2 on that's bare bones. No worries.
Thank you.
The SROs, you have to have them budgeted for the summer months? I would
The
assume
full-time guy, yes.
you get that schools aren't gonna pick up their salaries for the summer months.
We can ask.
I know.
But the D&E funding fully funded the salary, 100% of it. We had made a proposal to the superintendent that you fund 0.8, and in the end, they just said covering all of it, provided that there's no backfill of overtime, right? Correct. So
Okay, well, that sounds fair, it sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, because currently Kingston is covering obviously KES, KIS, which is a part-time SRO position. He works full-time patrol. He works at the schools on overtime. And then the middle school is currently similarly set up, but that will transition to the same as the high school, where the high school is currently fully funded by Kingston. And now the middle school by the district, obviously the Kingston are paying a portion of that, but the district decided, even though it's a year-round position that needs to be funded, they would fund the entirety of that, understanding the fact that Kingston's completely covering the high school SRO.
Excellent. Excellent. Anything else? All right. I move that the finance committee recommend approval of the police department budget at $5,388,375.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, aye.
Marcia, I.
David, I.
Debbie, I.
Finance committee recommends approval of the police budget unanimously 500 as presented. Thank you, chief.
thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank
Chief.
you, Laura. Thank you, officers.
You didn't bring me candy though.
I have Starburst in my box. Are you done?
Okay, the next item is the selectmen budget.
Got it.
So Keith and I met very briefly yesterday to talk about both the selectmen and the liability insurance budgets. The selectmen budget in particular is very, very similar from the previous year. I think $300 got moved from one expense line item to another. There's the typical increases for personal services that overall ends up being an amount that I think actually gets reduced because the overtime went from 10 to 5, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're really going down by about $1,000 in this budget. There's not a whole lot else to say, although I'm mostly happy to defer questions to Keith about that.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, the selectmen budget here. I took a quick look at it and remind me, I think we talked about this with one other budget. Remind me again what the accounting line is for it.
Audit,
$58,000, that
the annual audit, outside audit.
the annual audit.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What's contact us again?
Services, contract services.
The, under personnel services,
Yes.
Town administrator's contract.
Is that, yeah.
Yep.
Keith,
that's me.
The wage and personnel line for the two administrative people that support the town administrator, information technology, human resources,
And the board of selectmen.
and the board of selectmen. The elected officials, the selectmen's salaries, $800 a year. The allowances, that, I think a part of that is the deferred comp plan for the town administrator.
No, if I could, the allowances are, is the stipend for the individual who oversees the green community program that we have. We apply to the state every year for improvements in our utilities. So they'll put in, for example, if we didn't have LED lighting, we would apply for a grant, hire a contractor, they would come in and do all the LED lighting. We have to do the reporting for those types of things. We get on an annual basis, I would say upwards of $100,000 a year for different buildings. That's what that money is for.
Okay. My other comment would be kind of a positive comment, I hope, is that you'll notice the 2024 actuals included contract services of $291,000. Well, that's because we had an assistant town administrator, and Keith has managed to run the department now for a couple of years without having to replace that position, so that we can, I think that's a positive, and I think that's the type of thing that, you know, in some ways, we're gonna have to have all departments looking at if we go forward, you know, hey, are the ways that we can do our jobs a little bit cheaper.
If I could, Mr. Pike, it's because of, Trish Tucker and Kathleen in my office who go way above and beyond, that have helped make that doable.
So, you know, that's an example of having three people and being able to do the job with two. I think that we have some people in Washington DC that are saying that can be done across the board.
Don't get me going.
And I happen to think they're probably correct, not doing it the right way, but making some reductions that are necessary.
Are we good with the bottom line for this?
You don't want to hear any more, Michael.
I'm gonna
Yes.
move the
Call the
finance
question.
committee recommend approval of the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal 26 in the amount of $433,769.
Dang.
All in favor, Carl, aye.
Is it 433 or 438?
There was an overtime reduction from 10 to 5. That's the
Oh,
$5,000
my
difference.
mistake, okay.
Michael,
Debbie, I.
Dave, I.
Marcia, I.
Yes, Marcia, I.
The Finance Committee recommends approval of the Board of Selectmen's budget as presented, 500. Liability and property insurance.
All right, my understanding is that this rate is set externally by a program in which a number of different towns participate. That it has typically annual increases, just for this year, in the vicinity of 10%, which is leaving us, it's a single line item, just over $500,000. And your experience, my impression is, has been pretty good dealing with a number of pretty urgent claims in the past 18 to
So
24
Maya,
months.
the Massachusetts Intermunicipal Insurance Agency, is the insurance company we use, like many communities, most communities. They've been great to deal with. We had a situation, unfortunately, probably a month or so ago, where a town plow truck hit a telephone pole, knocked it over, damaged a property owner's house by pulling some of the wires off the house partially. And that homeowner was dealing with a variety of personal things as well, and reached out to Maya. They allowed us to hire an electrician to get the house fixed and have electricity up and running without having to wait for an adjuster and things of that nature. So right now it's a 10% increase. They haven't set rates yet. I spoke to the gentleman we deal with from Maya this afternoon just to verify they hadn't set rates yet. They haven't. He thinks 10% is a reasonable number. We've had some challenges, workers' comp wise this year, but feels as though a 10% should be fine.
Yeah, I think the insurance industry, that we're seeing increases across the board, so I personally don't like the 10% increase, really 20% that we've seen here in the last 2 years. At one time, isn't this something that we do things to get
Yeah.
credits?
We still do. And those credits are netted out against the appropriation. So we as a town participate in training events, things of that nature. Our HR coordinator takes care of trying to work with department heads to enroll in some of these trainings. So we do take advantage of that. I don't know what the number was for fiscal 25, but we do reduce those. We try to take advantage when we can.
And do we have any control over the deductible amounts? Are they pretty much standard?
Boy, Carl, I gotta be honest with you, I haven't asked that question, so I don't know. I could certainly find out and let you know, but
I don't think we really need to know here as a committee.
so I can tell
I do
you,
think it's something worth looking at.
let me change my answer. We were notified by Maya 6-8 weeks ago, I think and partly in their way to try to reduce the increases in insurance, have modified some of their deductibles and they haven't gone down. So increases in automobile deductibles and, building repair deductibles have gone up from fiscal 25. So I guess my answer would be we don't have the ability to determine what our deductibles are.
I'm a
It's
big fan
kind of
of
a
big
pool.
deductibles, but
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand.
yeah, I would expect that probably controlled by Maya.
It is. Excuse me.
Okay, I don't have any other questions or concerns about liability insurance.
I move that the finance committee recommend the liability property insurance budget for fiscal 26 in the amount of $501,050.
I seconded.
All in favor, Carl, I.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
David, I.
Debbie, I.
Thank you very much.
Finance Committee recommends approval of the liability property insurance budget as presented. So I think that takes care of our individual department budgets now. So that we have basically gone through every budget except for the warrant, no, except for the education budget. So as I said, we'll do those next month. Kathleen, do you want us to have changes to do next time around? You'll have changes for us?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a few departments that changes that we'll vote on. It should be straightforward. One of my frustrations the last couple of years, and I guess I'm getting old because I'm putting up with it more. I would love to see a budget, say, February 15th, that is fixed, period. And you don't make changes in it. But, we just can't seem to get to that point that, and I swear, the earlier you start the budget process, the more changes you have.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes,
In relation to that, so would the finance committee like to review the current bylaw for the budget and consider proposing to make changes that we brought forward either this spring or next fall?
I think the finance committee would just as soon stay out of that can of worms. The town administrator has that on his lap very nicely.
And again, I'm happy to bring a change forward if the FinCom would like me to. We pushed the review back about a month, a year ago. And, again, we get it in earlier to give the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, in our case, an opportunity to review those budgets. If the FinCom wants to spend one night on the budget like they do on the other side of the street, we'd be happy to do that for you as well. Then we would lock in I would guarantee a locked in budget, Mr. Chairman.
I'm pretty comfortable with the schedule.
Okay.
It's having to make so many changes. And I think I've said it before. Pick a number, I don't know, $50,000. Any change of less than $50,000, sorry, it's not gonna be done.
And my only concern is, and I'm not trying to debate with you, I believe that's gonna create an atmosphere where departments, when they're putting their budget together, are going to potentially inflate some of their numbers because they want to make sure there's some wiggle room in case some of the estimates that they're using in their budget are just that. And so that's frankly my concern. I will take whatever guidance the FinCom wants to provide and go forward with it. I just want to.
I said that I'm basically giving up, that I expect that we have to live with having a lot of changes. But, and I see part of the issue that it's hard to get the latest and greatest out to 7 members of the finance committee. So that we sit here and somebody doesn't have the $5,000 update, somebody else doesn't have this one. And it's just, and I guess I go back to people don't like to hear me say real world, but my real world experience, okay, when a budget gets put together, the department head has one opportunity. He submits it, and again, you usually don't have this 6-month period of working on budgets in private industry. Enough of my editorializing. I'm not sure that we have anything else that we have to do tonight. Any comments from the members concerning tonight's meeting or the future meetings? Deb, you have something?
Just, the regular buzzword, it's not sustainable, but, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Public comment?
Anybody from the public have a comment?
I just have a question. So we're leaving open the question of an override for the police department. Is that right?
The
Pending,
Board of Selectmen are going to discuss it next Tuesday night and ideally make a decision whether they're going to move forward or not. If they decide not to, there's no reason for you guys to debate it tonight.
when I'm not sure I understand. If they
So,
decide not
if the
to,
Board of Selectmen
doesn't
chooses-
support an override.
The override won't go on the warrant,
Oh, okay.
and there won't be anything to debate.
And they're gonna discuss that next.
night.
Okay, so we're,
The idea is that if one gets put forward under the warrant, it has to be approved by town meeting or inclusion on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
And the town election date, which I should know, is
May,
late May,
no,
Yeah,
it's middle of May.
middle of May.
I think it's the
20.
third Saturday, I'm sorry, I don't know the date, third Saturday in May.
May 17th.
May
oh, I thought it was
17th.
the 20.
And so we're still within the window of being able to getting close.
As long as the, yes, as long as there's not
See
a motion on the floor of town meeting, we're good.
Is there a possibility that the $500,000 gap that I think Carl mentioned this evening between the budget that we approved tonight and the budget that the chief would like, that would allow the additional, I think, patrol officers and sergeant, is that, no dispatcher, just, is there a possibility that we could come up with that $500,000?
As I sit here today.
No.
We have $206,000 in, excess tax levy. That's certainly available. I don't know of any other changes or reductions that are coming that were estimates that are going to amount to, 200 and.
Well, Carl mentioned the difference in the ambulance revenue that was budgeted and what is an actual, sounded like,
Okay, so then now you're dealing, because we're up
I'm
against the
sorry.
tax cap.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Now that we're up against the tax cap. If we use the whole 206,000 excess tax levy, that's all I have unless I reduce appropriations. I don't,
Okay.
even if I'm gonna bring in additional revenues, I don't have the ability to apply those additional
Okay.
revenues to the net appropriation.
The inevitable. I get it. Okay.
Good idea.
Yeah, yes.
Very creative.
I'll be real brief and I'll be happy to talk to anybody about this.
Can't wait.
You could also consider half fiscal year funding, anticipating that the next fiscal year, there will be a need for an override. So we could get there with a half a year fiscal year funding positions be filled at the end of the calendar year, knowing or strongly anticipating that the override next fiscal year. But again, I don't want to slow your meeting down at 7:02.
I'm trying
We'll
to,
be happy to talk
This
to
is
you.
early one.
So
Yeah, I think that 2 weeks from tonight,
We'll know
we'll be
more.
in a lot better position. And remember that if we're talking 500K, that's outside of this budget. That will be a separate warrant article.
Right, I understand.
Outside of this.
right, I was just hoping we wouldn't have to have
We're, and
an
there's,
override.
there's some of us working towards that.
Okay. We need a better.
Any other questions or comments?
I move that the finance committee adjourn its March 5th meeting at 7:01 PM.
Second,
All in favor, Carl, I.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
Dave, I.